Hare Krishna, everyone. A warm welcome and very good evening to all our viewers on various platforms. On the behalf of Evolve Pune, I would also like to extend a greeting on this auspicious day of Nursing Chaturdashi. Uh, very important day for all Vaishnavas. So may Lord Nursing Dev give choicest blessings on you and take away all your sorrow and grief. Coming back to our discussion, which is on chapter number 14 of Bhagavad Gita. In our series, it is titled as The Puppet Show. Yesterday we discussed about the consciousness. Prabhuji explained in detail, right, how consciousness got contaminated with various modes. And as we know, like from chapter 13 to till the last chapter, which is chapter number 18, we are going to discuss very detailed of the Jnana Yoga. Chapter 14 is a continuation of the same. So without any further delay, I would like to hand over to His Grace Madan Sundar Prabhu to go to chapter number 14.
Hare
Prabhuji,
Krishna.
welcome.
Am I audible?
Yes, Prabhuji, you are audible.
Hare Krishna, Shikhar Prabhu. Thank you for joining in. And very happy Nasima Chaturdashi to all our viewers. As Shikhar Prabhu rightly said, it's a very, very special day. Just 2 days before, we were talking about what is Ekadashi, which is also known as Sri Hari Vasara, which means the day of Lord Vishnu. So similarly, today is the appearance day of Lord Krishna, Lord Vishnu as Lord Narasimhadev. In other words, it's a very important day uh, where we can actually attract the mercy of the Lord if we take part in His hearing and chanting of the glories of the Lord, and maybe make a commitment to become more committed to our spiritual vows and towards our spiritual life. So, in that context, I sincerely welcome each one of you, those who are there on any of the platforms that we have going on live. On another topic, in fact, the 14th episode of this Gita Lesson series. And today we're going to talk about something very, very important and I would say interesting also. So, before we begin for the session, we'll offer prayer and then we'll start our session. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनाशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पश्यताय देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So yesterday we had discussed on the topic of the consciousness on the chapter 13 of Bhagavad Gita, wherein Arjuna asked six questions to Krishna, like Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Jnanam, Gneyam, Purusha, and Prakriti. And we had discussed several questions on these top of these questions, like where is my freedom? Why do bad things happen to good people? Are we the controller? Are we the enjoyer? Like that, the concept of three doers, and how do we understand the laws of nature? Like that. So yesterday we saw Krishna explain Kshetra means the field of activity, which means the body. Kshetrajna refers to the knower of the field. There are two knowers, soul and super soul. Jnanam refers to the process of knowledge. To understand Gnayam, which means to understand the soul and the science of super soul. And finally, the discussion was Purusha Prakriti. While describing the subject matter of Purusha Prakriti, Lord Shri Krishna explained, Arjuna, there is one supreme Purush, that is the absolute truth. The living entities are mini Purushas, minuscule Purushas who are trying to actually usurp the position of the Supreme Purusha. But while trying to grab the position of the Absolute Truth or the Supreme Lord, they don't recognize and realize in their madness that how they have become caught in the web of Maya. Very simple example. If you have ever seen a cobweb, a spider by its own will builds a cobweb and by his own will wraps up the cobweb and goes away. Now, when a mosquito enters the web, the more it tries to, move around, the more it gets entangled. That is how Lord Shri Krishna explains that every living entity, the more he tries to enjoy, the more he wants to control, the more he gets entangled into the web of Maya. And what is that web of Maya? That is what will be discussed in today's discussion. How we are trapped. In other words, yesterday we discussed why we are in the material world. Today we'll be discussing how we are actually trapped in this material world. So this was the verse that was discussed yesterday, where Lord Shri Krishna said, Purushaha prakriti stohi bhunkate prakriti jan guna karanam guna sangasya sad asad yoni janmasu. The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus, he meets with good and evil among various species. In other words, it's like a mosquito. Our example is in the sense of like a mosquito or getting caught into the web of Maya, and accordingly, he attains his next destination. That is what is being explained. So, in other words, this verse explains how we get entangled into this material world. So, once again, chapter 13, we learned about how we are caught into this material world, and that is because of the desire. Lord Shri Krishna explains that it's the desire of a living entity because of which we are into this material world. But now, in this chapter, Krishna will describe how the living entity is bound to this world and is not able to become freed by himself. And that is the subject matter of the modes of material nature. And that brings us to our today's topic, the puppet show. How many of you have seen the puppet show while growing up, maybe in school or college life? Any one of you? Those assembled here, right? Remember? It used to be great fun, isn't it? It's fun as long as you're outside of that. It's miserable if you are the puppet. That there would be somebody behind the curtain, he would be moving, and the puppets are helplessly jumping around under the control of the puppeteer. Similarly, the puppet show here, I'm not going to give you any show here, there's no drama we're going to play here. Puppet show is nothing but a journey of our life, a journey of a life of a regular conditioned living entity, unknown to him, and under his ignorance, I would not ignorance, of course, ignorance, unknown to him, and beyond his will, he is being forced to act in certain ways. Let me ask you a simple question: how many of you have experienced in your own life you have given different responses to a similar situation in different times? Yes or no? You have given different response to a similar situation in different times. Or I can put it the other way around to make it more simpler. How many of you have experienced that we generally don't have much control on how we react, how we respond? Although we do have a control, we have that ability, but our responses are often not the way we thought it to be. We react very, very differently in different situations, circumstances. If a similar person, if let's say that two different people are put into the similar situation, there's a lot of probability that they may act differently. So why people react differently for the same situation is something will be discussed today. So at least I consider this to be one of the very, very important subject matter. In fact, Lord Shri Krishna himself says it's very important subject matter. If we understand this, then we can detach ourselves from the functionings of this world. And also we can understand why we are what we are today, why I have developed a certain kind of personality, and you'll also gain an insight on how to change your personality or your behavior as you move forward. So that is what we're going to take a look at today. So one of the very important thing which is clarified in this chapter is the prominent misconception that we all carry is everyone thinks I am the doer and controller. However, Lord Shri Krishna in this chapter will debunk this misconception that I am the doer and controller. To give you an example, some time ago, one saint, one of our ISKCON devotee, he went to a hospital to meet another patient. And the head of the hospital, who was atheistic, had no faith in God, when he heard that some sadhu has come to the hospital, a very known sadhu, very famous sadhu, very advanced personality, so he thought, let me go and meet with this person and find out why these people unnecessarily waste their life and lives of others by saying God exists. What God has done? Look, I have built the hospital. People come here asking for my help. If God existed, then why people had to come to me? The temples should have given the treatment, isn't it? But people don't go to temple when they're sick; they come to hospital. So like that, he went to the sage and began to talk to him, and then he challenged, "Why do you believe in God? What your God have done? See, I act as a God. I am in that role because I save the lives of the people. Can your God save the lives of the people?" So, like that, he began to talk. Then, after hearing his rant, then the sadhu asked, "Oh, really? You claim that you save the lives of the people? Then let me ask a simple question to you. Have you ever lost any life in this hospital? In other words, has ever any patient have died in hospital?" So the doctor was surprised. He said, "Yes, of course. Some patients die and some patients survive." And the sadhu roared, "So then it means you are the killer. If you think you save the life, then you are also killing the people." Now, this he had never expected. Although a big doctor, but not even such a common sense to understand this, he got really kind of a little bowled out. There's a sound coming from here, I guess. Need to be muted. He got totally perplexed. That's the point. People think they are the controller, but are we really the controller? Is the doctor really the controller? And Sadhu is this one simple statement: if you think you are the savior, then you're also the killer. For the first time, doctor began to think, yes, actually, indeed, I'm not the controller. I'm not the saviors of the life of everyone. That was the case, then nobody would have died under my care. So in this chapter, Lord Shri Krishna is going to speak that how Jiva is a puppet in the hands of Lord's external energy. To give an example of how, under the influence of the modes of mental nature, we react differently. Very simple example is a traffic jam. If you're stuck in a traffic jam, you might have seen different people react differently. I remember some time ago means almost 2 years before. Now, COVID time, there's no traffic jams, or maybe 1.5 years before. I remember when I was coming to Hinjawadi at one of the traffic lights, when I had to, stop my car. Somebody drove the car behind me, and he was honking, honking, and honking. I mean, now come on, tell me, what can I do? There is a signal. I can't jump the signal. I really got fed up. I opened my window and I said, okay, upar se ja, upar se. you fly your car. What the hell is this? you know. So, anyways, that's one kind of response. I mean, I'm also in a traffic jam. He's also in a traffic jam. Probably I'm kind of relishing the lecture that I'm hearing of my spiritual master, and that fellow was getting fed up. Same situation, but different responses. Let me give you another example of it. Socrates, one of the very famous, you can call him a philosopher, theologian, and a spiritualist in one sense. Was indeed a spiritualist. So he was a great philosopher also. Often he would have his friends, like-minded people, visit him at his house, and for hours together, he will talk about philosophy. What is life? What is beyond life? What is his whole creation? What is his purpose? Like that. He was married to a woman who was literally a short-tempered woman. she'll get angry at petty issues. So this particular day, when Socrates was sitting with his friends, the wife was really upset for whatever reason, details are not known, and she was again and again throwing tantrums from the kitchen. She was screaming. Some other excuse, she had to speak loudly or scream out, because of which all their meeting was getting disturbed. Socrates understood that, it's not going to work out. She's thundering too loud. So better we should go outside of her house, meet at a place which is more peaceful. So he requested his friends, let's go outside. The weather condition is not good at home today. And the clouds are really thundering loud. So let's go outside. And as soon as they stepped outside, suddenly the thundering clouds began to pour heavily. There was such a heavy downpour, incidentally, only onto the head of Socrates, a very specific downpour onto the heads of Socrates. And everyone, those who assembled there, when they looked up from where this rain came, they were utterly shocked. His wife, Socrates' wife, was standing on the roof with a bucket full of water that she had poured onto the head of Socrates. Now everyone was looking at Socrates. How is Socrates going to respond? Let me ask this question to all of you, the dear husbands. If in this case would have happened with you, how would you would have responded to such a situation? Be truthful, okay? Don't be scared. You can share your heart, how you would have responded. So, how would you have reacted? Okay, for those of you who could not relate to a case study because a husband wife scenario, let's take it a more of a corporate scenario. Imagine you have been called for a meeting. In the meeting, you have a CEO of your company as present, and there you have a four vice presidents. Then you have 8 board members, 14 managers, and you are one of the member there. And your CEO enters the meeting, and he's screaming at the top of his voice because one of the members assembled there had not done their task properly. Something had happened, something where a little bit have gone wrong, and the CEO is screaming at the top of his voice. Now, someone else have made a mistake, but he's screaming at somebody else. The question comes, how would you respond? How would you react? So let's take a look. How did Socrates respond? In general, when somebody screams at us, our natural response is of anger, isn't it? In fact, when we are disrespected even a little, generally these days people are so much in Rajagun and Tamagun, they become extremely angry. So let's take a look. How did Socrates responded when he understood the water was poured onto him by his beloved wife? Socrates said something very interesting. He said, some time ago, it was thundering, and now it's raining. That's all. I mean, an incredible response where he was not at all affected, and all the assembled friends were utterly shocked, more shocked than what happened with Socrates by the response of the Socrates, and they all went into the park and they had whatever conversation they wanted to have it. So, a similar situation, if any one of us were there, probably would have reacted differently. I mean, unfortunately, I really don't have any access to what all you're commenting. So, so some people have written they would have been hurt badly. Some probably would have screamed. So point is, similar situation, responses are different. And the reason for it is the 3 modes of material nature. That is the science behind it. Lord Shri Krishna explains these 3 modes, which he's going to explain in the chapter now, permeates everything. How you walk, how you talk, how you dress, what you eat, the kind of thoughts, your lifestyle, the kind of movies you watch, the kind of music you hear, the kind of a holiday spot you choose, everything, your kind of association you have, everything about us is under the control or influence of the modes of material nature. Therefore, please pay attention. These modes permeate everything. Our lifestyle, attitude, behavior also fall under these modes. Thus, Krishna explains that everyone is trapped in the material world like a mosquito trapped into the cobweb. So, question comes, my dear Lord, is there a way out of it? Yes. Lord has already explained the way out of it way before in the 7th chapter, verse number 14. Devi Shugunamai Mamamaya Dharatya. This is that Devi Lord Shri Krishna was addressing in the 7th chapter, under whose spell, magic spell, we are not able to see the Lord, although He is all pervasive. And Krishna says, nobody can transcend or defeat this material energy of mind, which is actually Krishna calls a divine energy here, by their own endeavors. Impossible. Mama eva duratya. Impossible. However, it becomes possible when Mam eva ye prapadyante. Prapadyante means surrender unto him. Mam eva, Krishna says, unto me. Then what will happen? Mayam etam tarantite. At that point of time, I will help you cross over the material nature or this modes of material nature or whatever, like this. Help, Krishna will help. So that's the premise or the subject matter that we're going to discuss in this 14th chapter. So let's take a look at the acronym. Now, this 14th chapter is a dedicated chapter to the subject matter of modes of material nature. This subject matter will be continued again in 17th and the 18th chapter. But in this chapter, Lord Shri Krishna speaks something very, very important that will really help us to, just like we plan your day, similarly plan your life, I would say. So acronym for this chapter is TRAP, where T stands for three modes, wherein Lord Shri Krishna begins this chapter by explaining the relationship between he, the material nature, and the living entities. Krishna explains it is the material nature which provides the bodies to the living entities. But question arises, just like a father sows a seed in the womb of a mother, and the mother gives the body, provides a body through the nourishment to the child. So who gives the seed? Who is the seed sowing father to this material nature? Krishna explains in the fourth verse, Hey Arjuna, it is I, Sarva Yoni Shukanteya, Murtaya Sambhavantiya, Tasam Brahma Mahadyonir Aham Bija Pratapita. I am the seed giving father. Where is seed sowed? In the material nature, and that material nature becomes activated, and then it provides 8.4 million species or the kinds of bodies and everything else for us to perform our puppet show. That is the point here. So Lord Shri Krishna explains further. So in other words, if you now begin to ask about who is our cause, so immediate cause is our parents, intermediate cause is the material nature, and who is the ultimate cause? Aham bija pradhapita. Who is saying this? Lord Shri Krishna. So Lord Shri Krishna further explains that how Jiva gets trapped into the material world, gets trapped into the material world because of his desire. And then Lord Shri Krishna have already explained the nature of the material world in chapter 8, where Krishna says it is nothing but dukhalayam, and a shashvana, temporary, and a place of misery, wherein this material world was compared to a prison house. So we are into this prison house as we discuss into the 8th chapter. But how are we bound? We don't see any walls around us. Lord Shri Krishna said we are bound by the three modes of material nature. Every living entity is tied with these three invisible chains of Sattva Guna, Rajaguna, Tamaguna. So here's my question to all of you. If Sattva Guna is compared to a gold chain, Rajaguna is compared to a silver chain, and Tamaguna is compared to iron chain, which chain would you prefer to be bound by? Would you prefer to be bound by gold chain, silver chain, or iron chain? Please pick your choice. I will proceed ahead in the meantime. So Lord Shri Krishna explains the three modes of material nature, and Krishna says, Sattvam Rajastama iti guna prakriti sambhava nibadnanti mahabhaho dehe dehinam avyayam. This material nature consists of three modes, sattva, raja, tamagun. And when the internal living entity comes in contact with this material nature, he becomes conditioned by these modes. So, what was your answer? What would you prefer to be bound by? Gold chain, silver chain, iron chain. So, correct answer is no chain. And that is what Lord Shri Krishna will explain and will also give us the wisdom how we can set ourselves free from this chains. Already we have discussed 7 chapter 14 verse, but let's take a look what Krishna speaks more here. So that is what about it. So ahead in the section, now there will be analysis of these modes in the context of what are the symptoms of one who is in goodness, passion, ignorance, how it influences, and certain examples. So let's begin with an example first. I like to narrate a story of a cap seller. It's a family of three brothers living in a town, and their business was to go and sell caps to other people. If I have to put it in Hindi, उनका business था लोगों को टोपी पहनाना. You know, in other words, just on a lighter note. So there are three brothers. Their respective names was Satto, Rajjo, and Tamo. And these three brothers will go on consecutive days in different directions to different villages to sell a cap. So let's begin our narration and let's talk about Tammo. One day, the brother by the name of Tammo was traveling through the forest to go to a particular village ताकि वो लोगों को टोपी पहना सके. On the way, after walking for a long distance, he became very tired. So he decided to rest. On his shoulder, there was a bag of caps. So he put the cap down and ate his lunch. And he also had a cap on his head. He took out his cap, put it on the ground, and went to sleep. After some time, when he woke up, he began to scream. He was shocked. He began to howl. Why bad things happen to good people? What did I do wrong to others? Why? What had happened? All the caps were gone. Not even a single cap was there. He frantically looked around. Where are the caps? Where are the caps? When he looked up on the trees, he saw there were monkeys. And so many monkeys were there. All of them have taken away the cap of this cap seller. He began to scream. He began to yell. He began to curse the monkeys and claiming himself to be a victim, like saying that there is no use. He became totally pessimistic, saying that there is no use to living my life. I've lost everything. And he went straight to a liquor house, drank a beer or alcohol, trying to forget the state of existence that he just came from. So this was a response to a given situation by the brother Tammo. The next day, similar incident happened with the brother by the name of Rajo. Long story short, same thing. He went to sleep. When he woke up, all the caps were gone. He began to scream, and he looked around. The caps were taken by the monkeys. He became so angry. He began to pick up the stones and pebbles, began to throw at the monkeys, howl at them, scream at them, chastise them, and whatnot. He tried his best to hurt them and everything. But forcefully, he tried to get the caps. At the max, one or two caps fell from the hands of the monkeys. He lost all the caps. He couldn't get it. Frustrated, disheartened, he went away, not getting what he intended to. Third day, consecutive day, something similar happened. In fact, almost similar thing happened with the brother by the name of Sattu. When he woke up and he realized all the caps have gone missing, and when he looked around, he saw monkeys. Oh, monkeys have stolen the cap. Now he began to think, what do I do? All my livelihood depends on the selling of the cap. I have to get the caps, but how do I get the caps? So when he began to think, he realized monkeys are good imitators. So he had one cap still with him, which he had put on his head, that he had folded and kept in his upper pocket. He took out the hat, and he understood monkeys are good imitators. He took out the hat in his hand, began to shake it, move it like this, and then he threw it at a distance. Monkeys, being a good imitator, began to imitate this man, and they also threw their caps on the ground. And immediately, this man went around running, collected all the caps, went to another village, sell the caps, and came back and make his living. I mean, everything is fine if all ends well, as there is a saying. In other words, he, although was put in a difficult situation, but with his calm and sober attitude, he was able to resolve the conflict. So this Satto, Rajo, Tamo are nothing but representing goodness, passion, and ignorance. The person ignorance only talks about victim mentality, always raises question about why do bad things happen to good people, but never does any action or any thoughtful deed. At max, he blames others or else goes and takes shelter of lower activities like gambling or alcohol intoxication, trying to forget his state of misery. Whereas person in passion, he is passionate, he immediately gets into action without thinking if those action or the action that he's about to perform is in the right direction or the wrong direction. And many times such person ends up in frustration because they have not put their thought before performing an action. Whereas person has goodness, before he acts, he thinks. And because he thinks, then he acts properly. And that is a major difference between the people in goodness and passion and ignorance. I hope this is making sense. Yes or no? Example is clear. Let's take a look at the symptoms now. Now, before we look at the symptoms, very important, interesting thing. All three brothers were faced by a similar situation, but their responses were different. So now you understand how the modes sattva, raja, tamaguna actually dictate our responses. So in whatever mode of consciousness it will be, will act. That's the reason in the beginning I asked how many of you have experienced that you have reacted differently to the similar situation in different times. If you reacted differently to a similar situation in different times, is because of the influence of different modes at you at that respective time. So what determines our response? It depends on which mode of consciousness we are situated in. So, how do modes affect our responses? A person is in goodness, he's calm and does a calm analysis before action. Passion runs with agitated mind. Person with ignorance, he gets into panic, fear, confusion, hue and cry, and that's all. So let's take a look at some of the qualities of a person in goodness. What are the qualities of a person in goodness? So Lord Shri Krishna explains, such a person on whom mode of goodness is predominant is in knowledge, he is peaceful and happy. He can see things in the right perspective. He has a calm, clear, and creative thinking. In other words, it helps one to find an effective solution to life's problem. One who is living his life in goodness has a clear set goal and a confusion-free life. How many of you have met people like this who are peaceful, content, and have a clarity of thought? Yes or no? So these are the mode of goodness people. Let's take a look of person in passion, which is the most of the population. Such a person is attached to prestige, is too greedy, too competitive, and over ambitious. Ye dil mange more, and more, forevermore. That is what is situation. He is a workaholic and suddenly wakes up to see himself at the edge of burnout, which means he feels so tired and so exhausted because of working extra hours for a long period of time because he's workaholic. And then he says, okay, enough is enough. I cannot do. So, it ends up in frustration. He's envious, competitive, hasty, self centered, and selfish, money minded, always conscious about how to make more and more money, have no charitable disposition. And even if he does charity, it is only to increase his prestige, to tell the society, see, I have done the contribution. So even if he does charity, that's only for the sake of his own increasing pride. And another very important thing, strong attachment to opposite sex in terms of sexual connections. So such a person in such a mode of passion finds difficult to stay focused for a long, always restless, always, I would say, dissatisfied because whatever comes his or her way, they think, no, I deserve better. And they keep on striving for more and more and more, remain always dissatisfied. How many have seen people like this? Have you seen people? Yes, no, maybe. All right. Let's come to the third category. I guess the picture speaks for itself. Help! I cannot do anything. Please help me, save me. I'm a victim. I'm a helpless person. Why people always do wrong to me and whatnot. So he's a person who's recognized with oversleep, lazy, and crazy. He indulges in drinking, smoking, drug addiction, and consider it to be a great happiness. He often postpones all his plans. Whatever he decides to do today, will do it tomorrow, and tomorrow will become day after tomorrow. He's depressed, lonely, confused, panicky, insecure, fearful, and always dependent on others. Very important, always dependent on others for his happiness. In other words, such a person believes right to be wrong and wrong to be right. Sinful life is a dharmic life, and dharmic life for such a person is sinful life. How many of you met such kind of dharmic people who consider performing sin is a real dharma of life? So these are the people who are living in tamoguna. Now you, I believe you understand. Now, if I ask you a question, let's do it this way. If I ask you a question, you all of you are aware association is contagious. The kind of people you associate with, that's what you become. So among these three category of people, with whom would you like to associate? Person in tamoguna, person rajoguna, or goodness? Whom would you like to associate? Goodness, passion, ignorance. That's the first question. Second, in case you have a query or you need some guidance, you're perplexed about certain decision in your life. We all need guidance. So my question to all of you is, whom would you like to seek guidance from? A person in mode of ignorance, he'll tell you, Baba, why to worry? दो पैक तू चढ़ा, दो पैक मैं चढ़ाऊंगा, बल्ले बल्ले, शांति से जिएंगे. That is tamoguna. Rajoguna person, act. Do not wait. Do it. Do it. Do not wait. Just do it. We'll see whatever happens tomorrow. And Satoguna person, well, let's think over all the different options that we have, weigh it, and then make a call. So, who would you like to take guidance or consult about your personal life, professional life, whatever? This particular subject matter gives you the guidance, also help you understand. Yes. 100% goodness. What about association is of goodness? What about taking guidance also? I believe 100% should be goodness. To make it more simpler, I'll give an example of another three brothers from the history. All of us know these three brothers, very famous brothers. Once you now understand the subject matter in that context, you will understand the subject matter of Sattva, Raja, Tama, Guna. And the three brothers are the famous personalities by the name of Vibhishan, Ravana, and Kumbhakarna. Wherein Vibhishan represents goodness, dharmic life, Ramana represents passion, never satisfied, strong attachment or attraction to opposite sex, and the Kumbhakarna, sleeping, lazy. Whenever he'll wake up, he'll just eat whoever he would see around, humans, animals, birds, beasts, and his water was his liquor. That's the only thing. So I hope you have understood the subject matter to some extent. We are just giving a synopsis. This is not a detailed discussion, but at least you've got a fair enough idea about how Bhagavad Gita is actually a practical wisdom. How many of you agree actually Bhagavad Gita actually gives us life lessons and gives us the direction or gives us the knowledge to lead us in the right direction? Have you ever found such a profound understanding of a human psychology anywhere? So crystal clear, and just whole almost 2.5 chapters are dedicated to the subject matter. So after discussing this, I'll a little bit change the course of discussion, and I'll try to make it a little more practical in terms of how does these qualities or three different modes affect the life of a leader. Now, why I have chosen the subject of leader, because all of us in certain quantity acting in the role of a leader. We all have some dependents. Those who are parents may have a kids. Those who are working in a corporate house may have some people looking up to them. Some of you may be a teacher or whatnot. So all of us are in some regard are a leader in a society. So how do leaders function under these three modes is what we're going to discuss now. So let's begin with what happens when a leader is situated in ignorance. What are his behaviors or behavioral pattern? As it is explained, such a person feels tired all over. A person in Tamoguna, because he is lazy, you'll find him always, Tamoguna means tiredness, effectively. That's what it is. Such a person is most inactive that way. His fatigue, his tiredness, laziness is mixed with anxiety, nervousness, and tension. Often, such people have a sense of low esteem, a lot of inferiority complex, and insecurity, and they find life being a burden because they're not able to deal with the work pressure or the social pressure or the relationships around them because of the choices they have made, not because of anything else. Further, such a person he feels undesirable moods, negative thoughts. Let me commit suicide. Let me give up the job. Let me give up my family relationship. Let me quit. This is the thoughts often rises in Tamoguna. And dysfunctional behavior, which means erratic behavior. Sometimes a person laughs, sometimes a person cries, strange behavior, and takes drug or alcohol to alter his mood further. And depression in such a situation could be triggered or worsened For such a person, he is quite prone to depression, and there are a lot of chances that he can further get into depression because of his repeated wrong choices under the influence of tamoguna. So, this is the people, or this is the mode of consciousness under which a person commits an act of suicide. This is where, so somebody who's committed suicide has been consumed by tamoguna for a prolonged period of time, where undergoing this depression, repetitive depression, he ended up making a decision of giving up. I quit. That is the point. When a leader is situated in passion, he has a stress driven mood. It's good in one sense. Stress is not bad, but he's often in stress because he has to accomplish a lot. He's greedy, he's highly competitive, he's envious. So he's always stressful because he has to do more and more and more. And that stress driven mood is what gives him a sense of excitement and sense of power. His physical energy is generally very high, very active, even though he may face high levels of stress. He tends to impatiently push himself towards one objective after another, rarely pausing to reflect or rest. In terms of what am I doing is right or wrong, such people, for them, a lot of companies says work is worship. This is mode of passion. Work is passion. These are the slogans in mode of passion. Where for them, act first, think later is the philosophy of life. What are the other symptoms? His efforts are infused with a moderate to severe level of physical tension. That's the reason people in this state of consciousness often experiences physical illness. He blunts his ability to pay deep, genuine attention to his own needs, other people's needs because he's selfish, and project needs, and can suddenly wake up to find himself at the edge of burnout and exhaustion. It is all, for a person in mode of passion, it's all about I. My way is the only way. That's their philosophy. Now let's come to the person or a leader in goodness. Feels low tension but high energy. Always cheerful, calm, and composed. Feels remarkably serene and under control. Replaces tense energy with an alert, more optimistic presence of mind and peaceful. Pleasurable body feeling, deep sense of physical stamina and well-being. In other words, such a person do not get agitated easily. It's difficult to disturb him that easily because he's cool and composed in his mind. He has a high mental and physical reserves, best combination of healthy vitality and increased creative intelligence. This is a platform where most of the innovations happen, creativity. They do as much as or even more in comparison to mode of passion, but with less struggle, less fear, and tear. How many of you have seen people in mode of goodness? They can continue working non-stop, yet handle a lot of anxiety and pressure and bring a smile onto your face. And how many of you have met people in mode of passion, highly pushing, and when you see them, you naturally make a U-turn, without a signal. Y'all have the experience. So, well, others may have the same experience with you also. So it's vice versa true. So now at least it gives you an idea. I remember a lot of time people say, Prabhu, I'm fed up with my manager, fed up with my manager. And when I ask them, tell me something about the manager, often these managers turn out to be in ignorance or in passion. I have ever found a case where a person will tell me I'm fed up with my manager. And if I ask him what are the actions and behaviors of a manager, and that manager turns out to be in goodness. Never ever. So if you're fortunate enough, if you have a manager or a leader in goodness. So moving on to the next section, next part of discussion. We're running short of time. Is a huge subject matter, could be discussed in many, many contexts, but we are bringing in some aspects of it. Arjuna began to thought, my dear Lord, does any of the modes becomes prominent? In other words, is there a competition between these three modes also? Or one is situated in goodness forever, passion, ignorance forever, like that? So this brings us to the second section, actually. We're coming to the end of time. We just come to the second section of this 14th chapter, where race for prominence. In essence, the gist of it is, Lord Shri Krishna explains, the modes are always competing with one another for supremacy on an individual. In the cycle of a single day, different modes achieve prominence during the different times. For an example, a day. Oops. Yeah. For an example, a day. A day is also divided according to the modes. How many of you remember your parents telling you should wake up early in the morning and study? Morning hours of best hours. How many of you have heard that, right? That's because early morning hours in mode of goodness. How many of you have heard that we should get up early in the morning and chant? You probably would have heard it from me all through the sessions, isn't it? That's the reason. Is a time of goodness. So if you do a spiritual activity in the early morning hours, then we extend the period of goodness for us. We increase goodness, influence of goodness on ourselves. That's the importance of performing spiritual practice in the morning hours. And as soon as the sunrise happens, you would have noticed your mind becomes agitated. Outside world, the law of activity happens. That's the beginning of passion. And when the sun sets, that's the time of tamoguna, which means you begin to feel tired and lazy. Of course, these days people feel tired all through the day. Why? Because they have been awake all through the night. So it's a different story. But that is what if not with human beings, at least you will see with the animals. This kind of a nature. Okay, that's the point about it. So Arjuna thought, my dear Lord, what is the result of actions in different modes? That brings us to the third section of this chapter, where actions in the modes from 14 to 18 chapter. So Krishna explains in this what are the result of action and the next life. So it is explained what are the results of action in ignorance, foolishness, madness, and illusion, passion. A person may get some mental peace or happiness, but ultimately misery. We'll speak about nature of happiness also under the three influences that will be discussed in the 18th chapter. More greed develops. A person, when he performs action and passion, it leads to more greed. Whereas in goodness, it leads to pious action, which purifies one's consciousness. And pure goodness, one obtains transcendental knowledge. So, and what about the destination? Okay. Yeah, we'll come to the destination. So this is about your actions being performed in different modes. So let's talk about our behavior, just to help you with a self-analysis of what modes are prominent on us. So what do you think about your behavior? And I'm going to give you three sets of behavior: set A, set B, and set C. Think about which of the set is most prominent. All of us would have all the three sets, but which of the set is the most prominent? All right. Set A, please pay attention. Set A means I'm often peaceful, I'm fresh and full of energy, I'm generally happy, and I feel like helping others. That is set A. Is that a predominance mode of quality within you? Then you say set A. Set B, I'm burning with desire. I am upset, short tempered, angry. I get irritated very easily. That is set B. Set C, I'm tired. Forget it. I want to quit it. Hell with everything. And that is set C. As I said, all of us would have experience of all these three. At current situation in your life, at this point of time in your life, which among three is the most prominent? If it is set A, then mode of goodness is prominent. If it is set B, then mode of passion is prominent to you. And if it is set C, then tamoguna is prominent on you. You have to become alert. If that's the case, you have to perform spiritual culture and practice sincerely to move forward to goodness with the help of spiritual life. So the kind of actions and the behaviors that we have, accordingly, our next life is determined. That is what Krishna explains. So those who continue to live life in ignorance, they take birth in animal kingdom, go down to hellish worlds. Passion, they take birth in human forms, you can say human species, and they continue to transmigrate and continue to engage in footy work. Those who are in goodness, and if they die and give up their body in goodness, they attain to the heavenly planets, celestial planets. And those who give up their life, or those who live their life in pure goodness, means their actions are in pure goodness. What are the actions in pure goodness? Devotional service to the Lord. Those who have performed devotional service to the Lord, like chanting of the holy names, reading and hearing, performing deity worship like that, such a people at the end of life go back to Godhead. And now we come to the last section of this chapter, where P stands for pure life, from verse number 19 to 27. So I know I'm running short of time. Maybe I can request you all that maybe I can take 5 minutes extra just to cover up this whole subject in 10 minutes more. To begin with, uh, all of you by this point of time would have understood this whole subject matter to some extent, but I believe there will be one question that would be ringing into your head, and that is power of conditioning is tremendous. Do I have a chance to become a better person? Do I have a chance to give up mode of ignorance and come to the stage of conscious mode of goodness? Because our conditionings keeps pulling us back into the lower propensities. Yes or no? So that question is being addressed here through a very beautiful puppet. If Shikhar Prabhu, you're around, I would request you to read out. Please read. This is the puppet from the chapter 14, verse number 10. Shikhar Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu. Bhagavad Gita, chapter number 14, 10th purport. But if one wants, he can develop by practice the mode of goodness and thus defeat the mode of ignorance and passion. Although there are these three modes of material nature, if one is determined, he can be blessed by the mode of goodness. And by transcendenting the mode of goodness, he can be situated into the pure goodness, which is called the Vasudev state, a state in which one can understand the science of God.
Very interesting. In fact, very pacifying instruction here. First thing is, Prabhupada says by practice, right practice, we can change the modes. Second, mode of goodness is not the goal. The state of Vasudev, state of consciousness, is the goal. For example, have you seen a cow being tied or the bull being tied with a rope? And she moves around the pole, or let's say a cow being tied around with a rope. So if it is, let's say, compare the rope with the modes. If it is mode of ignorance, then the rope size is 5 meters. If it is mode of passion, the rope size is 10 meters. As the size of the rope increases, length of the rope increases, the cow has a more freedom to move around, yes? So in case of mode of goodness, let's say it's a 50-meter length rope. Cow has a lot of freedom to move, but still she's tied up, yes or no? That's the point. So goal is not to remain tied up. Goal is to, unbound ourselves, and that is possible by spiritual practice. So how I think, speak, and act will depend on how I endeavor to give up. Very important. How I think, speak, and act will depend on how I endeavor to give up. Generally, the challenges that we face is we often have attachment to wrong things and aversions to the right things. We are supposed to give up the attachment to the wrong things. We are supposed to become averse to wrong things and attached to right things. So begin with, first of all, what are the wrong things? These are the four wrong things: meat eating, intoxication, gambling, and illicit relationships. These are the four wrong things that we are supposed to give. And what are the four right things that we are supposed to accept in our life? Sattvic diet, vegetarian diet, Krishnatarian diet, which means offering to the Lord. Sattvic dress, simple dress. We'll talk about dress in the future session, about how the dress have an impact on our consciousness and lifestyle. And sattvic environment, taking out time to meditate on God and being contemplative about ultimate purpose of life. And the best time again is the early morning hours. And the last is sattvic association, company of saintly people and spiritual literature. So Lord Shri Krishna in second chapter verse number 64 says, one should give up aversion for the right things that bring one to the mode of goodness. It is possible for every serious human being to elevate himself by his willpower and by taking shelter of the God to come to the state of goodness and then cross beyond it. So sattvic diet, sattvic dress, sattvic environment, and sattvic association. We find all of these four things at one place, and that is called as International Society of Krishna Consciousness. Prabhupada talks, in fact, writes in the purport, why ISKCON is needed. Sattvic diet, you go to temple, you get Krishna Prasadam. Sattvic dress, simple attire. When you take to spiritual culture, everyone gives up those flashy and trendy clothes, expensive clothes, often which are torn from different parts of the body. And you put on a fresh piece of cloth, neat and clean clothes like that. You have a sattvic environment like a temple. Your home becomes a sattvic environment when you begin to practice spiritual culture. And sattvic association, you get association devotees. So ISKCON was created for this purpose, Shikhar Prabhu, please read. Prabhupada writes,
Since the present civilization is not very congenial to the living entities, Krishna consciousness is recommended. Through Krishna consciousness, society will develop the mode of goodness. When the mode of goodness is developed, people will see the things as they are. In the mode of
code.
ignorance, people
One
are
Hinjawadi code.
in the mode of ignorance, people are just like animals and cannot see things clearly. In the mode of ignorance, for example, they do not see that by killing one animal, they are taking the chance of being killed by the same animal in the next life. Because people have no education in actual knowledge, they become an irresponsible.
Because of having no knowledge. Am I sound is on?
Yes,
Because
please.
they have no knowledge, that's the reason they become irresponsible. So Prabhupada is saying why ISKCON is needed to share Krishna conscious or transcendental knowledge so the ignorance can be removed. Let's see further. Please go ahead, Shikhar Prabhu.
To stop this irresponsibility, education for developing the mode of goodness of people in general must be there. When they are actually educated in the mode of goodness, they will become sober, in full knowledge of things as they are. Then people will be happy and prosperous. Even if the majority of people aren't happy and prosperous, if a certain percentage of population develops Krishna consciousness and becomes situated in the mode of goodness, then there is a possibility of peace and prosperity all over the world.
So let me ask to those who are connected with us for a short while, maybe for a year and more, do you see a difference in your state of consciousness that you have today and what you had before coming to spiritual culture? If you think yes, in a positive context, then write your answer with yes. You know, all of us would have seen that there's a tremendous change in our consciousness, not only with consciousness but also with desires. And when desires change, so does our lifestyle changes. Please continue reading, Shikhar Prabhu.
Otherwise, if the world is devoted to the modes of passion and ignorance, there can be no peace and prosperity. In the mode of passion, people become greedy and their hankering for sense enjoyment has no limit. One can see that even if one has enough money and adequate arrangement for sense gratification, there is neither happiness nor the peace of mind. That is not possible because one is situated in the mode of passion.
How many of you have heard people complaining that I'm not able to sleep in the night? Restless. I spend sleepless nights. So many times I get a message like this, or people tell me, this is mode of passion. You may have all the possessions. What will you do with all your wealth? You can't even buy a sleep for yourself. That's the point here. Please continue reading more.
If one wants happiness at all, his money will not help him. He has to elevate himself to the mode of goodness by practicing the Krishna consciousness. When one is engaged in the mode of passion, not only is he mentally unhappy, but his profession and occupation are also troublesome. He has to devise so many plans and schemes to acquire enough money to maintain his status quo. This is all miserable.
Yeah. Go ahead, continue.
In a mode of ignorance, people become mad. Being distressed by their circumstances, they take shelter of intoxication and thus they sink further into ignorance. Their future in the life is very dark. It's in Bhagavad Gita, 14th chapter, 17th verse. There's an opportunity for
Just
man.
one, yeah, just 1 second. So Prabhupada have categorically described the life of a person in goodness, passion, ignorance. And I've made an appeal through this purport that how important it is for us to cultivate goodness. Passion, ignorance, lifestyle takes you, degrades our life despite our possessions. Now, Prabhupada will talk about the next thing. Please read ahead. 18th
There,
purport.
there is an opportunity for man in the mode of ignorance and passion to be elevated to the mode of goodness, and that system is called Krishna consciousness. But one who does not take advantage of this opportunity will certainly continue in their lower modes.
Yeah, that's the point. Prabhupada says you can transform yourself by the process of Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna, 1 second, yeah. We can transcend this lower modes by the process of Krishna consciousness and live happily. And that is the purpose of ISKCON. ISKCON gives us the association right kind of people, gives us the right environment, teaches us about what should be our lifestyle, teaches about what kind of food we should eat. And Prabhupada used to say the goal of Krishna conscious life is simple living and high thinking. That's the point about it. And we have seen practically how Srila Prabhupada, with the wisdom of Bhagavad Gita, transformed hippies who were living a life in utter tamoguna into happies. And I remember meeting many of these devotees back in America. Many of them told me, if it was not because of Srila Prabhupada, we would have died long, long ago because of our sinful life. So much into drugs, so much into intoxication. For how long we would have survived? And they are still living happily and, in fact, acting on a platform of a Brahmana, worshipping the Lord, blissful in Sattva is because of the Krishna conscious culture. And that is the goal. Srila Prabhupada created this ISKCON society to spread the transcendental knowledge to one and all. And that should be our responsibility also, to help people understand Bhagavad Gita, or give them an opportunity to read and understand Bhagavad Gita. Like our lives are getting transformed, similar opportunity should be given to others also. And with this, we come to the conclusion of our chapter today, where Lord Shri Krishna concludes in the 26th verse, Mamachayo vicharena bhakti yogena sevate saguna samati etan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in devotional service and failing in all circumstances at once transcends the modes of nature and thus come to the level of Brahman. So we all have that opportunity by taking to the spiritual culture of Krishna consciousness. And in case if you're finding little challenge, I'll conclude with a very meaningful prayer as a take-home message for all of you. O Lord, give me the courage to change the things which can and ought to be changed, the serenity to accept the things which cannot be changed, and the wisdom to know the difference. With that, we come to the conclusion of this very important chapter, where we learned how we can perceive how people are functioning in this world with a mistaken belief of free will. But everyone is under the control of the modes of material nature. Everyone is impelled to act according to the influence of the modes. The state of freedom begins when we actually transcend the modes of nature, or else they act to perpetually trap us into this material world. And if you do a closer analysis, we can look at the whole world and we can see how people are actually living their life with a mistaken belief, I am the controller. But when you look at it from the perspective of the wisdom of 14th chapter, you'll call them in Sattvagun, Rajagun, and Tamogun. These people are acting helplessly without the knowledge. With that, we conclude our today's discussion. Tomorrow's discussion is another very, very profound subject matter, where Lord Shri Krishna explains that how a living entity lives his life in this world. To give an example, imagine someone checks into a hotel room and he tries to make his temporary stay as a permanent stay into that hotel room. He tries to paint the walls, change the furniture, removes the paintings, and put the paintings of his family and whatnot. Like this, he wants to bring about the change there. Wouldn't you call it to be ridiculous and foolish? Which is a hotel room. It is not his permanent house. So Lord Shri Krishna in the next chapter would explain how this material world is like a hotel room where we are trying to make a permanent arrangement for our temporary life. Neither this place is permanent nor our life is permanent. And through this, Lord Shri Krishna will elucidate a very important principle about the real home is spiritual world. And by the wisdom given in 15th chapter, we can disconnect ourselves from this idea of making this home a permanent home and develop right consciousness and conceptions and understanding about our real home, that is the spiritual world. So we'll do this discussion tomorrow. With that, thank you so much for joining us for today's topic. Now we'll end. If in case anyone would have questions, we'll ask our host to ask the questions. Thank you once again. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. I mean, it's very practical chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and thank you for beautifully explaining it. Uh, in this chapter, I found most of the slides which person can actually take the printout and paste it somewhere in their house. All the verses of this chapter I found very profound and practical. And thank you for all these details. So we already reached our time, Prabhuji. You like to take questions, or can we take it tomorrow?
We can take 2, 3 questions if in case there are. If not, then it's all right. I know today is a day of festival, but our schedule was such we had to do a session today. So fine. If there are any 1 or 2 questions, we can take that and then we'll end.
Okay, I mostly see the feedbacks, not the question as such.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I
I
thought
hope
there were
everyone
going to
get
be
it.
actually, this is a subject matter where people would often have more questions. So fine. Probably people have just broken their fast, so they're still hungry and tired. So fine. We can conclude for today. So once again, thank you so much for joining, and of course, thank you for adjusting with our time, a change of time at the last minute. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki.
Yeah, Prabhuji, last question come, but we'll take it tomorrow, or we can take it now. There's one question come.
Okay, go ahead quickly.
Do the modes of material nature keep changing, or they're constant? Can a bad situation turn a person who is usually in mode of goodness to be changed to mode of passion and ignorance?
Can you say that again? Do the modes of material nature keep changing, or are they constant? They keep changing, but you have an opportunity to make yourself fixed in any of the modes through the practice of spiritual culture, practically, particularly in mode of goodness. What was the question after that? I just saw the first line. Yeah. Can a bad situation turn a person who's usually in mode of goodness be changed to mode of, oh yes, definitely. You know, you can get affected. It depends on the quality of goodness. If you're not firmly fixed in mode of goodness, mode of goodness is also determined by knowledge. If you're not firmly fixed in transcendental knowledge, then you can easily get degraded into lower modes of consciousness. That's all possible. All right, we can discuss more on this tomorrow. There are a few more points with this question that I realized. We'll discuss that tomorrow. All right. Tomorrow's 15th chapter is another very small chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So maybe we may have more time for question answers. So Shikapu will pause here for today.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes.
All
So I'll
right.
take all
Thank
the remaining
you.
questions. Thank
Hare
you once again,
Krishna.
Prabhuji. Thank to all audience on the different platforms. Thank you. And once again,
Just Rakhi's comment I see here. Why there was a fasting until dusk? Because Lord Narasimhadev had actually killed Hiranyakashipu at this point of time. So that's an understanding. We fast until, by celebrating the deliverance of Hiranyakashipu. All right. Hare Krishna. We'll
Hare
meet
Krishna.
tomorrow.
Any pending questions? Yeah, we'll take it tomorrow. Thank you. Thanks again.